When someone is truly hurting, they don't always express it openly. Instead, their actions or lack thereof become the biggest indicators of their internal struggle. Silence is not just an absence of noise. It is a powerful presence in itself. It forces a person to confront emotions they may have been avoiding, and in many cases it speaks volumes about what they're going through. Think about this. When someone is unbothered, they move on without hesitation. They fill their time with distractions, they continue their routine as if nothing has changed, but when someone is in pain, silence becomes heavy. It becomes a space where their thoughts grow louder, where their emotions become unavoidable. And this is exactly why silence during no contact is so powerful. It removes all the external noise and forces a person to sit with the reality of what has happened. For a man who is truly affected, this silence won't just be an absence of conversation, it will be a psychological shift. He may act indifferent on the outside, but on the inside, he will start to notice the void. He will start to recognize the loss, not in a dramatic way, but in the small, everyday moments that remind him of what's missing. Maybe it's reaching for his phone, only to realize there are no messages from you. Maybe it's hearing a song that suddenly brings back a memory. Maybe it's finding himself in a situation where he would have normally shared something with you, but now you're not there. At first, he might try to ignore it. He might distract himself with work, friends, or even other people. He might tell himself that he's fine, that he's moving on, that he doesn't care. But silence is relentless. It creeps in at night when he's alone. It follows him in quiet moments, when he's not surrounded by noise, and eventually it forces him to confront the emotions he was trying so hard to suppress. One of the biggest misconceptions about men and breakups is that if they aren't showing obvious pain, they aren't feeling it. But understand this, people process emotions differently. Women often express their feelings outwardly, talking to friends, journaling, crying, and analyzing. Men, on the other hand, are conditioned to suppress. They are taught from an early age to push through emotions, to act unbothered, to man up. But that doesn't mean the emotions disappear. They just sit beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of weakness, waiting for the silence to become too loud to ignore. This is why no contact is so effective. It isn't just about withholding communication. It's about creating space for realization. It's about allowing the other person to feel what life is like without you in it. And the truth is, if he didn't care, if he wasn't affected, he wouldn't feel that shift at all. He wouldn't notice the missing messages, the absence of your voice, the lack of reassurance he once had. But when someone is truly hurting, when they are truly affected, silence becomes their biggest enemy. Have you ever noticed how some people suddenly start reaching out? Not necessarily to talk, but just to check in. They may not say it outright, but the small, seemingly meaningless actions, watching your stories, liking old photos, texting something random just to get a response, are clear indicators of discomfort. That's because when someone is truly over something, they don't feel the need to check in. But when silence starts to weigh on them, they start looking for ways to break it. At first, he might resist. He might act as if everything is normal, as if he's unaffected. But as time passes, and as the silence stretches longer, the cracks start to form. He might get irritated for no reason, lash out at friends, or seem restless. He might try to replace you with distractions, but deep down, he'll realize that no distraction fully fills the space you once occupied. And here's where it gets even more interesting. When he realizes that the silence is entirely up to him. See, in a breakup where one person chases and the other pulls away, there's always a power dynamic. But when you go completely silent, you shift that power. You remove yourself from the equation, and suddenly he has to sit with the fact that if he wants to hear from you, he has to be the one to break the silence. This moment, this realization is often the turning point. It's when he starts questioning it's when he starts replaying memories in his mind, wondering if he made the right decision, wondering if you're thinking about him too. And the longer the silence continues, the more powerful it becomes. Silence is not just the absence of communication, it is a mirror. It reflects back to a person the reality of their choices. It forces them to confront their emotions. And when someone is truly hurting, this silence doesn't just feel empty, it feels overwhelming. It becomes something they can't escape, no matter how hard they try. When a man is truly hurting during no contact, his behavior will not remain the same. It will shift. Sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, but there will always be a change. Whether he acknowledges it or not, emotions have a way of manifesting themselves through actions, and pain, especially the kind caused by a deep emotional connection, rarely goes unnoticed. At first, he might try to act like everything is normal. He may go about his routine, hanging out with friends, keeping himself busy, and even appearing completely unfazed. But over time, this facade starts to crack. The emotional impact of no contact builds, and whether he likes it or not, his behavior will begin to reflect what he's feeling internally. One of the first shifts you might notice is his social media activity. This is one of the easiest ways for someone to project an image of moving on while secretly battling inner turmoil. He might suddenly start posting more than usual, pictures of him out with friends, motivational quotes about growth, or even old throwback pictures of himself before he met you. Why? Because social media is a way to send indirect messages. It's a controlled environment where he can present the image he wants you to see. If he's posting more, especially things he normally wouldn't, it's often a way of coping with the void. But not all men respond by posting more. Some go the opposite route. They disappear. They stop posting, stop engaging, stop interacting online. This can be an even bigger sign of emotional turmoil. When a man is truly hurting, sometimes the weight of his emotions makes him withdraw. He doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want to put on a show. He's too busy sitting with his emotions, trying to figure out what's going on inside. Another shift that happens is his interaction with mutual friends or your close circle. If you have mutual friends, he might start asking about you, but in a subtle way. Maybe he casually brings up your name, hoping to get some kind of update. Maybe he doesn't ask directly, but he lingers in conversations where you're mentioned. Sometimes he might even do the opposite. He avoids any mention of you altogether. But make no mistake, avoidance is also a reaction. It means your presence, even in conversation, stirs something inside him that he's not ready to confront. Then there's the unexpected check-ins. Maybe he suddenly starts watching your stories again after weeks of silence. Maybe he likes an old post, or even sends a random message that doesn't really say much but feels like an attempt to reopen a door. Sometimes it's as simple as a misplaced, "Hey, how have you been?" or a message that seems to come out of nowhere, an inside joke, a song reference, or something small that reminds you of a past moment together. These actions might seem insignificant on the surface, but in reality, they speak volumes. Because when a man is truly done, he doesn't feel the need to do these things. He doesn't feel the need to remind you of his presence, even subtly. But when he's hurting, when the silence starts to weigh on him, he looks for any way, no matter how small, to reestablish a connection. Beyond the digital world, his behavior in real life will also shift. If he used to be someone who was always out and about, suddenly he might not be as social. He might withdraw from certain activities, seeming distracted or less engaged in conversations. Maybe he's short-tempered, snapping at small things because he's battling frustration he doesn't fully understand. Or maybe he goes the opposite way, overcompensating with distractions, constantly making plans, staying out late, doing everything he can to avoid being alone with his thoughts. And then there's the way he talks about you, if he talks about you at all. If he's hurting, there's a good chance he'll try to downplay your importance. He might tell his friends that he's fine, that he's moving on, that he doesn't care, but listen closely to what he's not saying. If someone brings up your name and he gets irritated, if he brushes it off too quickly, if he suddenly feels the need to prove that he's over it, that's a strong indicator that he's anything but. Another major shift comes in how he handles memories and sentimental triggers. Maybe he keeps listening to a playlist you made together. Maybe he randomly brings up a trip you took or a funny story from when you were together. Maybe he still wears the hoodie you left at his place or holds on to small things that remind him of you. These details might seem minor, but they hold weight. Because when a man is truly over something, he doesn't cling to reminders of the past. When he's still emotionally tied, those little things become anchors to a time he's not quite ready to let go of. And then there are the more extreme shifts, the rebound relationships, the sudden changes in lifestyle, the drastic decisions that seem out of character. If he jumps into a new relationship right away, it's often not because he's moved on, but because he's trying to fill the emotional void as quickly as possible. If he suddenly starts changing his look, picking up new habits, or making big life changes, it could be his way of regaining a sense of control. Ultimately, a man who is truly hurting won't be able to hide it forever. His behavior will betray him. It might not always be obvious, and he might not even recognize it himself at first, but the emotional impact of no contact always leaves a trace. Whether it's in the way he interacts with the world, how he engages with your presence or absence, his actions will shift in ways that reveal what's really going on inside. No matter how strong he pretends to be, no matter how much he convinces himself and even others that he's moving on, the emotional impact of no contact is unavoidable if there was a real connection. You cannot share deep moments, memories, and emotions with someone and walk away completely unscathed. Even if he appears to be handling the silence well, there is always an internal battle taking place beneath the surface. Men are wired to suppress emotions. They are taught from a young age to be strong, to avoid vulnerability, to push through pain instead of confronting it. Society conditions them to believe that expressing feelings is a sign of weakness. So instead of dealing with emotions in a healthy way, many men resort to distraction, denial, or deflection. They may throw themselves into work, drown themselves in social events, or even seek the temporary comfort of someone new. But make no mistake, these are not signs that they have moved on. These are coping mechanisms designed to delay the inevitable, the moment when they are forced to sit with their emotions and truly process the loss. One of the most telling aspects of emotional impact is the way it sneaks up on him when he least expects it. In the beginning, he might feel fine, maybe even relieved. The breakup or the space might have felt like a decision he had control over, but emotions don't work on a schedule. They don't hit immediately for everyone. Some people feel the impact right away, while others experience it in waves, unexpectedly and unpredictably. It starts in small moments, a morning routine that now feels empty, a place you both used to go to that suddenly carries a weight of nostalgia, a joke that doesn't land the same way because you're not there to share it with him. At first, he might push these thoughts away, brushing them off as nothing, but over time, they start to pile up. The silence created by no contact magnifies these feelings because for the first time, he has no outlet for them. The reality is, before no contact, he had access to you. Even if things were rocky, there was still an emotional connection, a line of communication, even if it was just occasional check-ins, small conversations, or unspoken reassurance. But no contact removes that completely. It doesn't just create space, it forces a stark contrast between what life was like with you in it and what life is like without you. That contrast is where the emotional impact becomes undeniable. This is why so many men struggle when they realize they no longer have access to someone they thought would always be there. Even if he initiated the distance, even if he was the one who walked away, he still had the comfort of knowing that you were within reach. That if he wanted to talk, if he wanted to check in, if he wanted that familiar connection, he could have it. No contact takes that away. And when something is suddenly gone, that's when the mind starts to truly recognize its value. At first, he may convince himself that this space is a good thing. He may tell himself that he's better off, that he's focusing on himself, that he doesn't need to feel anything about the situation. But then something happens. Maybe he sees a picture of you unexpectedly. Maybe a friend mentions your name. Maybe he stumbles upon an old message that hits differently now. That's when the emotional impact hits like a wave. Men process emotions differently than women. While women typically feel the depth of their emotions immediately, expressing them through talking, crying, or seeking support, men often suppress those feelings until they can no longer avoid them. This is why many women feel heartbreak intensely at the beginning, while men seem fine. But as time passes, the roles begin to reverse. While women begin to heal and accept reality, men often start feeling the full weight of the breakup later, when they least expect it. It's in the quiet moments, the moments when distractions fade, when the noise settles, that the emotional impact truly takes hold. He might find himself replaying conversations, rethinking past decisions, questioning whether he made the right choice. He might start to notice that the excitement of new distractions doesn't actually replace what he lost, that even in a crowded room, he still feels something missing, that the temporary highs don't erase the emotional reality he's been avoiding. This is why many men eventually reach out. Not necessarily because they're ready to reconcile, but because they're looking for relief from the emotional weight. The silence becomes too heavy, the memories become too vivid, the emptiness becomes too obvious, and in that moment, the emotional impact of no contact is no longer something he can deny. Whether he acknowledges it or not, the emotional weight of losing someone significant always finds a way to surface. It may not be immediate, and it may not be expressed in obvious ways, but it always shows up. The mind can try to ignore it, the heart can try to resist it, but emotions will always demand to be felt, especially when they are real. The real test of no contact isn't about whether he's hurting. It's about whether you can stay strong and let him fully experience that loss. Because here's the truth. The moment you break no contact, the moment you reach out first, you relieve him of the very pressure that forces him to reflect on what he's lost. Think about this for a second. When you first went no contact, he may have expected you to reach out. He may have thought that at some point you'd give in, that you'd be the one to send that first message, that you'd be the one to check in, ask how he's doing, or try to fix things. He may have assumed that the silence was temporary, that it was just another phase. But when you don't break, that's when the real shift happens. Because here's what most people don't realize. The absence of communication isn't just about ignoring someone, it's about creating emotional contrast. It's about letting him experience what life feels like without you in it. And that contrast, that's what triggers the realization. That's what makes the silence unbearable. That's what forces him to feel. See, when you hold the line, you're not just implementing a rule, you're enforcing a boundary. You're telling him without saying a word that you respect yourself enough not to chase, that you value yourself enough to let him come to his own conclusions, that you're not someone who is going to beg for attention, validation, or closure. And that's powerful, because the moment you break no contact, the moment you give in, you send a completely different message. You tell him that no matter what happens, no matter how much time passes, he still has access to you. You tell him that he doesn't have to work for your presence, that he doesn't have to miss you fully, that he doesn't have to feel the weight of his own choices. But when you stay silent, when you hold your ground, that's when he feels it. That's when he starts to question everything. That's when he starts to realize that maybe, just maybe, you aren't waiting around for him. That maybe, just maybe, you're stronger than he thought. That maybe, just maybe, you aren't the one who lost something, he is. This is where the power of psychological momentum comes in. Because every day that passes without contact, your value in his mind increases. Why? Because scarcity creates value. Think about anything in life. What is rare, what is hard to get, what is not easily accessible, automatically becomes more desirable. The moment you make yourself too available, too easy to reach, too eager to respond, you lose that leverage. But when you remain silent, when you let him wonder, that's when the shift occurs. And that shift is critical, because at first he might enjoy the space, he might feel relief, he might even convince himself that no contact is exactly what he needed. But then something happens. The longer you stay silent, the more he starts to doubt. He starts to wonder why you haven't reached out. He starts to question whether he made the right choice. He starts to feel the absence, not just the silence. That absence, that's what creates longing. That's what forces him to reflect. That's what makes him miss the little things, the conversations, the inside jokes, the way you made him feel, the emotional connection he took for granted. And the key to making this process work is holding the line long enough for that realization to fully set in. Because here's what most people don't realize. When you break no contact too soon, you interrupt that process. You stop him from feeling the full impact of your absence. You give him relief before the lesson is learned. And that's why so many people get caught in the cycle. They go no contact for a little while, then they break it. Then they have a brief moment of reconnection, only to find themselves back in the same position weeks later. Why? Because no real shift happened. No real lesson was learned. The silence didn't last long enough to create true emotional contrast. So here's what you have to ask yourself. Are you willing to be strong enough to let him feel it? Are you willing to stay silent even when it's hard? Are you willing to trust that your absence is more powerful than your presence right now? Because when you do, when you truly commit to holding the line, that's when he starts to recognize your value. That's when he starts to realize that losing you wasn't just a temporary inconvenience, it was a real lasting loss.